Okay. Well, good morning to you. How are you? It's so good to be with you again today. So I'd like to begin today's talk with a story about a story. So many years ago, in a small village, there was a wise old teacher known for her exceptional ability to connect with her students. She wasn't just an educator, she was a storyteller. One day, a new student arrived in her class struggling with anxiety and feeling out of place. The teacher noticed this, and she decided to share a story. She spoke of a small bird who couldn't find its song in the midst of noise in the forest. And as the bird listened to the stories, the wind, the trees, and the river, it slowly began to discover its unique melody. The story touched the new student, who realized that just like the bird, they too had their own unique place and voice. This simple yet powerful story helped the student find the confidence and belonging. So this tale illustrates the profound impact of storytelling and the impact that it can have on our students. Today, I want to explore the art and the power of storytelling in education, discussing how we, as educators, can harness this timeless tool to enrich our teaching and connect with our students at a deeper level. So numerous studies have highlighted the benefits of storytelling in education. According to studies published in the Journal of Reading Psychology, storytelling significantly improves students' comprehension and retention of material. Another study in the Journal of Educational Psychology found that storytelling enhances students' engagement and motivation to learn. A research project conducted by the University of Tennessee demonstrated that students who were taught using storytelling techniques scored 20% higher on comprehension tests than those who received more of a traditional education. So this data underscores the effectiveness of storytelling in enhancing one's learning. Now, the power of storytelling is significant. Storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication, and it predates written language. And it's been used to convey knowledge and culture and values for generations. So why is storytelling so very important? Well, stories engage our emotions. As Maya Angelou famously said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Well, stories have the power to help us feel. Therefore, remember. It helps us with complexity and reducing the complexity of an idea. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. Stories can break down complex ideas into simple, retainable narratives that are easier to understand and remember for our students. Stories stimulate our imagination, making learning more engaging and more enjoyable. They help students visualize mentally and explore new ideas and perspectives. And it encourages empathy. Stories allow us to experience different viewpoints, different cultures, past and even potentially future, fostering an empathy of understanding. So as we step into the shoes of characters, we learn to see the world through their eyes. There was a study that was done on empathy of students, and they determined that students obviously are most empathetic to others when they can walk a mile in their shoes. But unfortunately, we can't just take students and travel to far off places or even far off times. But this study revealed that students who read good literature that had robust characters, that they gained the empathy almost as much as if they were to actually travel to another place and meet people face to face. So the power of stories is so very important. You know, in classical education, we often use great historical fiction to help bring history to life. As Heather said yesterday and many times today, that we never want to tell a student what they can discover for themselves. Stories give us the opportunity to kind of lay the treasure map at the feet of our student and allow them to hunt for the treasure themselves. So how do we tell a good story? Well, let's talk about it. So when we think of stories to best use or make up ourselves, we want to make sure that they are relatable to our students. Choose stories that have personal anecdotes, some historical events or fictional tales that are relatable to our students in both their character and their situation. Structure. You know the best story has some tension in it, right? So good stories have to be clear and have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Start with a hook to grab their attention. Build with interesting details and tension, and then conclude with a memorable takeaway. Have emotion. Infuse emotion in the story, whether it's joy or sadness or fear or excitement. Emotions make stories compelling to listen to and make them very memorable. Use visual imagery if you can, vivid descriptions, imaginary ideas, and help students visualize the story. You can even enhance them with some physical or mental illustrations. And authenticity. Be genuine in your storytelling. Authentic stories resonate more deeply with students and help you build trust with them. I love, Heather, I think, displayed so beautifully today, truly the art and impact of storytelling. She talked about a few stories with particular students in classroom environment. She used an acrostic or that mental imagery of Merlot, right? She used the metaphor. And those things are so very important when you're communicating with your students. It does two things. It helps you learn how to, convey the information, but it also teaches your students how to use these powerful tools of communication themselves. So we want to use these physical and mental illustrations to help enhance stories, to help teach our students how to be great communicators themselves. Use props and visual aids, objects, pictures, diagrams. When Heather talked about using the classroom as a wrestling mat and physically putting a fern in the middle of the table, right? Using a prop to really help things come to life. For example, if you're telling a story about ancient Egypt, showing pictures of pyramids or artifacts, something that helps students really see what it is that you're talking about, even feel it, smell it, make it come to life. Gestures and expressions are so important. Body language, facial expression can really add depth to a story. Demonstrating actions or emotions helps students connect with the narrative itself. And then those mental illustrations, I think, are so important. Using beautiful, descriptive language, painting a picture with your words. Descriptions that appeal to all of the senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. We've talked so much over the past day about how we as educators are the ones that need to embody what it is we want our students to emulate. We want to be students so that they are students. We want to be good, effective communicators using beautiful language that talks about the sights and the smells and the tastes and the touches so that they learn how to communicate that way as well. Analogies and comparisons are so important. Relate new concepts to familiar ones for them. Explaining the structure of the atom by comparing it to the solar system can make the concept more accessible for students. Use parables. We know the master teacher used parables all the time. Parables and allegories and metaphors. They're so powerful for teaching challenging subjects. So let's think about using them a little bit more effectively. So parables are simply stories used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. They're often used to teach values and ethics to our students. So for example, can you think of some? What are some good examples of parables? Sower in the seed, excellent. I'm sorry? Prodigal son. The talents, yes. It's one of my favorites, yes. Fables, so let's talk about it. Right. What is a fable?
It's a story that tells a lesson like a parable.
Right.
So you categorize.
I would. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So the Good Samaritan is a great example of a parable as well. So these stories, and what I love about parables is it serves up, again, just as Heather was talking about, the beauty of not delivering something to students that they can learn themselves. Parables provide that beautifully. You stop short of, and the moral of the story is, and you have them tell you what the moral of the story is. There's so much that can be done when you use these beautiful stories, and you don't have to come up with stories on your own. There are beautiful stories in play out there. And so finding the right story to illustrate what it is you want. I think stories, especially parables, are lovely to talk about when you've got a discipline issue or a sin issue that you're trying to wrestle with in a classroom. Put it out there. See where the students go and the conclusions that they make. It's beautiful to see when students regulate themselves or when they encourage each other to better behavior. And stories can do that for us. Allegories. These are beautiful stories with deeper meanings that convey complex issues through symbolism and events. So what are some allegories that we're familiar with? Yes? Pilgrim's Progress is a beautiful one, right? What else? Would you all consider Narnia? Yes, I would. Yes. Yeah. It tells us a story, right? Uses symbolism. What else? One of my favorites. Everyone's created equal, but some people are more equal than others. Oh, Animal Farm, right? Or animals, I shouldn't say, not people, animals. I'm sorry?
All pigs are created equal.
Is it I thought it was animals, isn't it?
All animals are created equal, but some are
More equal than others, yes. Right. Excellent. So, thought-provoking allegory can help students discuss more complex topics. And this is very powerful for them. Metaphors. Metaphors compare what? Two things, two unlike things, typically, right? Two unlike things to highlight a particular quality or aspect. So describing the mind as a garden that can be cultivated, a theme for this particular summit, can help students understand the importance of learning and personal growth. We can talk about how plants might need different care and need a concept, and make the concept more relatable to our students. So the power of storytelling isn't just from teacher to student. There is great power in having students learn how to tell good stories themselves. We, in classical teaching, we talk a lot about narration. How many of you have used narration in your classrooms? Is this something that you use? What is narration? Okay, paraphrasing what they just read. How is it an impactful or important tool for student learning? When you've seen it in practice, what is it that?
It helps you gauge their comprehension and understanding of what they read.
Yes? Anything else?
I think the student has to reason it in their own mind, and it's not just something they take in. They have to actually think about it to give it back to you.
Yes. Understanding how to distill the most important things from, or the most important ideas from a broader passage of reading or an experience is something that is learned. It's not something we just know how to do. And you know this to be true because if you ever ask a little one how their day was, what do they do to you? Tell you everything. I woke up and my blankets were all bunched up and I was cold and then I put on my slippers and that, like, they'll go through every single thing, right? Teaching students how to distill what is most important, what are the key ideas, is important. So having them narrate is very important. Having them retell stories in their own words and in their own way. There is great exercises of using fables for students, reading those very short, pithy stories, and having them retell the story in their own way. This is a great way for students to learn how to write well and write with purpose. When we use fables, we'll ask students to potentially use different characters, use a different setting, and make sure that they stay true to the moral. We might talk about different morals that can come from a particular fable. So using those stories as a foundation and having students then come up with their own stories is really a powerful tool. So narration itself helps enhance understanding. By retelling the story, students process and internalize that information, deepening their understanding of the material. It helps our students improve their memory, really kind of retaining that information and articulating what they have learned. It helps develop communication skills. What is the single thing that people are most scared of? Public speaking. Do you know that public speaking is number one and death is number two? People rather die than public speak. It's crazy, right? But teaching our students to have that comfort and facilitation with standing up in a room full of seated people, narrating what it is that they've just, or summarizing what it is that they've just learned is so important, right? Getting your students up and talking is a great thing. Encourages critical thinking skills. So narrating requires students to analyze what it is that they've learned, interpret the story, and foster that critical thinking element. So there are many things that we can do as teachers when we are crafting our stories. What we want to do is create or pick our message, choose our message wisely. What do we want to convey to our students? What's the moral lesson? What is the complex idea that we want to put out there? What's the emotional experience that we want our students to have? Then create your characters. Who do you want to help you tell this story? Get the students engaged. Who can they relate to? Is it going to be a real character? Is it going to be a fictional person? Because stories don't have to be just fictional stories. They're amazing people who have done amazing things and powerful things. I love using real stories with my students. It gives them encouragement that they can do great things or they can overcome in a significant way. There's story after story of people in history who've done remarkable things. My favorite thing is to sit down with students and talk about the people of the Bible. Feel like hushed tones and great engagement when you talk about what happened, David and his stumbles, and how God still said that he was a man after his own heart. So having our students really engage with those characters who have flaws and yet still can be redeemed. Build a plot. Again, have that clear beginning, middle, and end, and build up the tension with your students. Get that hook in. Really suck them in. Add great details and emotion. Use beautiful illustrations with your students. And practice it. Practice your storytelling. Pay attention to your tone and your pace and your body language. Really engage with students. It is an art. It is an art worth cultivating as a teacher. Do any of you have stories about how you've incorporated stories in your classrooms? Or is there a teacher in your school that you can think of that uses them well? Yes?
I'm a homeschool mom, and when we were learning about ancient Rome, or ancient Greece as well, when we read the story of Philippides, he's the guy who ran the marathon. He ran back 26 miles, and I'm a marathon runner, so I could like incorporate it and tell about my marathon and how he must have felt, and so it was like one of my greatest mom teaching moments.
I love
could do
that. Right, our own personal experiences really help add that human element to the stories that we tell. Absolutely. What else?
I start telling stories like of just my life to my students, and just last year I just started doing that. I go, what do you want to know? So they're like, oh, when did you get your first dog, or whatever. So I'll tell the story, and I'm like, I need to get better at this because they really love it, and they're just like engaged.
Yes.
When I saw this, I'm like, I gotta do this.
Yes, and it's very interesting that students don't think you're human. Have you ever seen a student outside of school?
Yes.
And it's like, even my high school students. I ran into a high school student at the grocery store not long ago, and I think she almost fell over. She's like, Mrs. Burns, what are you doing here? Like, I eat too. But thought it was just so funny. And I have, even this student, even I have to say, I've got a great relationship with her. Like, but the face she put on, I thought, you are shocked to see that I'm in the same place you are outside of school. But they love that human connection. And I think you're right. Telling even personal stories, of course, we need to be appropriate in that. I know you all will be. But having a glimpse behind the curtain that you are human can help engage and help students relate to you and be engaged with you. Anything else? Yes.
There's a search engine called Bing. I know everybody does Google, but it's Bing. And during snack every day, we Bing. We call it, or the kids will say, "Are we going to Bing today?" And so you always want to check it because there's been a few times, very few, where especially Halloween, where it'll be a picture that I don't really want to do that one. But anyway, Bing has a different picture every single day, and they're beautiful pictures all over the world, all over. Anyway, and it also has, if you move the cursor to the right part of the screen, it asks a question, and there's 3 questions. And I won't go into the whole how we do it, but when the image comes up, everybody can put in what they think that image is. What do you
Oh,
see?
yes. So it might be an intense look at a picture, and then
It
you.
could be, or it could be of pictures from all over the world
Okay.
and historic places. It's fascinating. And then many times I will ask them to tell me a story. If it's a place in particular, like if it looks like an image of a town or a medieval town, whatever, to give me a story about a child that maybe lives there. And it's amazing what they will come up with. It's not a full story, like a storytelling, but it's what they envision. And they tell it to me. But then anyway, you can do the questions, and if we get all 3 questions right, which, many of the questions are over, I have to teach first grade, over their heads, over my head.
Right.
But if we luck out and we get all 3, then we have a little dance video. But anyway, to hear them tell these stories of what they see and what they come up with is
And
fascinating.
I love that. And what I love about the tool of using a picture is that then you can ask them why did you think that about the character? So that then you're helping these students you're helping them learn discursive reasoning, right? Reasoning from fact. Oh, I assumed that this is where the person was from or what their life was like because I saw this. And so you're helping them connect those facts with a conclusion. And that's really important. We want to start very early talking to our students about those things or helping them map that that's how they are to think rather than, oh, well, I just felt like this was the way to go. So using a prop, using like a picture, is a great launch point for good storytelling. What else? Yes.
So I teach math, and I know it's like tricky to do it with math, but I love doing that. I make like little stories. Like if I'm doing algebra, it's usually 6th to 8th grade. So I'll like make a story about X for that day. If we're looking for an X, like X is very snooty. It likes to be alone. Okay, let's kick off this number to the other side. But you've got to do the plus and minus first because it's closer with the negative and division, and then you always do the opposite. So I I guess the X is really going through it today. It just wants to kick everyone out to the other side of the equation. And I'll have them make little stories, and I think that has been really helpful for math.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anyone use Life of Fred math? Do you want to share what makes that curriculum unique?
It's just a story-based math. I use other math too.
Yes.
Supplemental, but it goes through the story of Fred, his job at Creighton University as a college professor, and even the very basics. They're introducing them into how to write equations and lots of higher up learning so that it's not as frightening and everything is in story form. Then at the end of each chapter, there's a couple of obviously some my brain is not working. What is that called when you have to actually do it? Exercises.
Exercises, yes.
Exercises that they have to perform.
Yes, it's a very compelling idea, right? Because math, there's so much fear that comes with math and more complex ideas. And so to tell a story helps reduce that fear. And I love that you're giving X a personality.
They think it's hilarious. They're like, you're so weird. And I'm like, yeah, if it helps you remember it, yes, it is weird.
I actually try to be as cringy as humanly possible. I feel like as a parent, my goal is to embarrass my children beyond belief, and yeah, I bring the cringe into the classroom as well. But I think your students will remember that forever, right? Think back to when you were a student, and I think as teachers, we often forget this. Like, what made you love particular teachers or remember particular moments in your classroom? I think what's really important as a teacher is often we give equal weight to every lesson we teach. Don't do that. Now that you're starting a new school year, take a step back. Think about where your subject fits into the greater mosaic of a student's learning for the year. Think about what is the most important things you want your students to walk away from your class with. 3 or 5 things. It can't be very much. I know it's a year's worth of teaching, but it's not going to be much. A handful of things that when your students exit your class at the end of the year, you think, you gotta know this. And then what I want you to do is say, all right, we're going to tell a story about those 5 things. We're going to make those 5 things so memorable for my students that they can't help but remember those as they exit, not just this year, but 10 years down the road. They're going to remember this. So make it impactful. Anything else? Any other? Yes?
I didn't realize until you started talking about storytelling, but I've got a pen pal in prison, and I asked him, he's a wonderful Christian man now.
Excellent.
And I asked him if he would like to write my students a letter, maybe a study or something scriptural, whatever. He ended up writing me a couple of letters telling his life story and how he,
Interesting.
where he grew up and how he ended up in prison and the things that happened to him. And my kids, especially my boys, they wouldn't listen to me tell them those lessons. But man, when I'm reading this letter to them, so it didn't occur to me until just now that enlisting other people to tell their stories could help.
Yes. I think that's a great idea. Get to know your parent population in your school. People are fascinating, aren't they? They've got interesting backstories. They are doing interesting things. Use them to help punctuate things in your own class, motivate students in a particular way. We have an influx of families for whom English is not their first language, that they are not first generation American, or they are first generation Americans. They're coming from Romania and Ukraine and Russia and Mexico. We have people coming from all over, and it's fascinating to me that this is kind of a new development for our school. But during family interviews, I would just love to hear their stories of why they came. And so my idea for this year is actually to have a panel of those parents to help talk about why they left the places they did and what they think is so great about America. And it does a great job, I think, of helping our students see how wonderful this country is, even though we're in a time when people aren't very enthusiastic sometimes about America. Yes?
Yeah, just kind of piggyback on what you're saying. I've been teaching 4 languages. We do a lot of storytelling because we realize the kids that are learning it, they grasp the language a lot quicker than if you just stick to your tradition.
Well, right. How exciting is, lists of vocabulary.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think so because obviously they just
Interesting. So when you give a student a story, I'm assuming you've got the vocabulary that they know kind of baked in, but it might be in a tense that they don't know.
Yeah, and then depending on their level, then, you know, that's the depth, obviously, that you choose, and, you know, your questions and everything is dependent on their level. So there are things that you have to prepare a little bit more, but they're more engaged, they pick up a lot more vocabulary, they're able to form sentences and the responses that, you know, that have to do with the story.
Yes.
Versus just, you know, identifying a grammar thing that they're trying to memorize or learn, but they're not attaching it to any context.
Yes. And so talking about storytelling and encouraging our students to storytell, one of the things that we do is have our students learn how to tell their testimony in whatever foreign language they're taking. And so that is a powerful way. They want to learn how to tell that very important story, and then they want to use that to minister to others. And so speaking their testimony is important. Yes.
How do you feel about the use of a little video clip that tells a story? Is that a no-no in classical education?
Using videos, just in general.
Just like, you know, like in a sermon might give a little video clip that tells a little short story, kind of to acted, you know.
Sure. I see no.
Use that in your school?
I see no problem with that. I don't love kids in front of screens all the time, but using technology judiciously, I think, is really important. And sometimes what videos can do that we can't is they've got the music element maybe, and they can orchestrate that story in a way that maybe we can't. I do love to use words so that students can picture it in their mind, right? The theater of the mind. But I think using videos it can be hugely impactful for students. Yes.
I just want to say, in case this is helpful, I came thinking you were going to help us learn how to tell stories because I'm not inventive.
Ah,
And her comment was useful about putting her personal
yes.
experience with the marathon story, right? And I thought I can draw on that for myself. And I remember a pastor I had, he rarely let us in, right? He taught and he was wonderful, but there were not those personal elements. And I was thinking just maybe it would encourage others, let them see who you are because you receive better the information that you need when it's tied to a person that they
Yes.
can relate to.
Yes.
But I got that out of this time.
And you can, so it's not just about you, it can be about your children. When I tell our students stories of past students and how they've tackled, so if they're struggling with something, for example, we have our students complete a thesis, a junior thesis project. It's a 30-page thesis on a world religion. They have to present that in front of a panel. And so as that time gets closer for students, they get a little bit more anxious. And so I will start to tell the story of students who also might have felt anxious or waited until the last minute to do something. And so you're able to tell them truthful stories about that help them learn a lesson or help calm fears. Yes.
Well, one of the new things that we're introducing at my school, so we did a collaboration with a school in Guyana. We went on a mission trip, and so we have over 100 students who are corresponding, writing letters, and so I'm very excited about having that, you know, intercultural connection and having the students tell their own stories. That was challenging for them initially, and so so that's something. I don't know if a pen pal project or pen pal exchange might be helpful for anyone else who would, you know, it doesn't even have to be with another country. Obviously, it could be.
Yes.
I've seen homeschoolers put it on like in Facebook groups. They're in another state or with another homeschool group, so they have that true exchange of actually receiving a letter in an envelope and the art of letter writing. So that's something that I love. And so you reminded the gentleman who said about the person in prison. You reminded me about that.
Yes.
But I love that our students. So some of them have multiple pen pals because they want to receive that feedback from
Yes.
an actual letter.
And I love I love that for two reasons. You can connect people with others who are kind of living the same experience, so you know you're not alone. Or you can have someone who has a vastly different experience who understand kind of the beauty of both situations. Yes?
And kind of going off of that, so we were on vacation and we met another family. Our kids connected really well, so we exchanged addresses so we could send each other postcards because they're little, so it's just going to be a couple sentences.
Yeah, that's
But just to update each other on like what our lives are doing, and they live in a different state, so just
yes.
staying connected through stories as well.
Exactly. And teaching your student then how to engage with someone else. So why don't you tell the story of your summer, what you did this summer, or tell the story of how we got our puppy, whatever it is, so that you help them learn how to tell an engaging story and bring people in. Yes?
I have a student, I have primary and grammar students, so we've done a lot of storytelling in both biblical studies, but Latin as well. And they've enjoyed it completely. One of them specifically, he loves puppets, he loves stuffed animals. So I was able to let all the kiddos incorporate, they wrote an entire one-page story. We had so much fun. English and Latin, and then retelling it as a puppet show. We had the most amazing time. And some of these kiddos came from public school, and just to hear their memories and how they were when they first got there to where they ended their year, they are just so blessed. They say that they've learned so much, and they never want to go back to public school. They love the way that they learn and how they get to be hands-on in what they do. It's amazing, especially when you do incorporate language and how some of them are Spanish speakers.
Yes.
The parents only speak Spanish, but they were able to relate the Latin and the Spanish to the English-speaking students. So then the English-speaking students were learning Latin and Spanish. It's phenomenal.
I love it. I love it. Yes?
As an example of taking a story that's well known and then putting it into more contemporary, you might look on YouTube. We just discovered this a while back, how they're using the stories of Peter and Ruth and different Bible
Yes.
characters, and the people, they're being told by junior high and middle school age students.
So they're using more modern language?
They
Or-
turn it into a personal, like Peter, talking about his friend. And
Oh,
how he
okay.
let his friend down, and he goes through all of this and all of his emotions and how he felt. And then at the end, he says, "My name is Peter, and you can learn more about me in the Bible."
Yes.
So it's an outreach tool.
So my last thing I want to leave you with, so you were talking about, I thought you were going to tell me how to tell stories. The best way to do that is first use stories that someone else has constructed. So like fables or a Bible story. And then you narrate it to your class. So you learn, just like we're teaching them how to tell stories, you learn how to tell stories. Take something that you love, you retell the story as the teacher, put it in your own words, bring the props, get students engaged. You learn how to do that, and then that will help you learn how to tell your own story, your personal story, another made-up story in a more engaging way. So you learn what I love about education, and particularly classical education. We're teaching your students how to learn because this is how you learn everything. And as a teacher, you can apply the same things to yourself. So with that said, our time is up. It was so good to be with you and enjoy crafting powerful stories for your students for